How's it going?
Good. Good.
I am SF Rogers,
And I am D.L. Golden.
and we are the Author's Chaos. And today joining us is the one and only Taylor Schafer.
Hi, everyone.
So, Taylor, let's just start out with why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm from central Wisconsin, so pretty much like the center of the state. I've lived here my entire life. I live with my boyfriend, our two cats, and our puppy. Um, I work a full-time job as a chiropractic assistant. So, on top of writing, I'm doing that. So it's a little chaotic, but it is what it is.
Yeah. We get that.
Yeah,
we get that.
everybody. It's so interesting seeing how many authors come from so many different walks of life. I mean, I'm a fifth grade teacher. Sarah is in sales.
Yep.
And so it's really fascinating to see all of these people. We do so many different things, but we're all writing at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really fascinating.
So, what genre do you write?
I write in like supernatural, paranormal romance, fantasy, stuff like that. I plan in the very distant future writing under a pen name for contemporary romance because I have a few ideas for that as well. So,
Okay, that sounds cool. So, go ahead.
Do you have a book out right now, or are you working on something? What's that look
it's paranormal fantasy, paranormal romance. It's called Lucifer's Assistant. I am in the process of editing it and renaming it, so it will be changing to Falling for Lucifer, the Devil's Mate. When I first published it back in December 2022, it was my first time self-publishing, so I didn't have really much of an idea what I was doing or much of a budget, so I didn't have the budget to get a professional editor, so we're going forward with that now, and hopefully I'll have that done soon. And then I do have one that I plan on releasing hopefully by the end of August, but we'll see.
So, you said you released in 2022. You've released one. Have
Yep.
you learned a lot since releasing that book that you changed for this one?
I knew nothing of like beta readers, ARC readers. Like I knew they happened, but I didn't know how important they were to like for me to do. So I learned that I learned marketing, I learned editing, like everything. So it's just been a crazy journey learning more than what I did 10 months ago, whatever it is now.
Yep.
Yeah, it's that's one good thing I guess about indie publishing is that if you're not satisfied with the way a work is, you can go back and make changes. You can just take it down and put a new version up. We had talked about that with my book Origins. I recently got vellum, and so it makes the interior all pretty and nice, and so I want to re-release a new version of it. And it's just as simple as finishing it up and re-putting it out there into the world. So it's really cool to see that other people also have done that. They're like, well, I've learned from this. I want it to be better the next time it's out.
Exactly.
So how long would you say you've been writing?
I've been writing since like my senior year of high school, so about 13 years. I did a lot of, I did a lot of Wattpad like writing, you know, how teenagers start out on there, and I moved on from there. I had originally did Lucifer's Assistant on there, and I got such good traction. I'm like, I need to move forward with this and get it done because it did so well, and it did okay on Amazon, but I wish it had done better. But I'm hoping with this re-release that I can get some better traction with it this time.
I think it's so cool. You're the second or third person we've talked to that said, well, I just started writing on Wattpad or different websites, and people enjoyed it, so I went and put it out into the world. I mean, I think a lot of us get started working in these different weird little places. Like, I remember I have parts of my story Origins, which are nothing like they are in the book now, but that are like on Gaia Online. I used to type in there and write on that, and it's changed so much since then. Sarah was smart enough that she doesn't have her stuff published out into the world where people can read the rough stuff. She just wrote hers down in notebooks, but
So I strategically put everything in notebooks. So like I have a whole shelf that's never going, no one's ever going to touch it till I die to go through it. Like no one's ever going to see it. No one's going to know. And they make fun of me because they're like, it's on paper, bah ha ha. And I'm like, yeah, but I also ain't got 4 million eyes on it. No, nope. It's for me only. Because these are baby writings and they're not that good. So, did you like you said you started on Wattpad? Was there an instance where you were writing in like notebooks or post-its or something like that? Because we've heard a lot of authors say that they've started like characterizations on post-it notes.
Yeah, the first one I actually put on Wattpad, I started in a notebook and then I found Wattpad and I'm like, ooh, I can do it this way. So that's how
Mhm.
Wattpad started.
Okay, gotcha, gotcha.
And I'm not real familiar with how Wattpad works for writing. So what you said it gained a lot of traction. How did that look for you?
So for Wattpad, it's kind of like Kindle Vella. You post a chapter at a time, and then people can vote on it and comment on it. So I get a lot of feedback and like good, a lot of reads. So you can track how many reads you get to. So it got, I think, 100,000 reads by the time I pulled it down. Several hundred comments and several thousand votes. So I'm like, it did so well. I'm like, this with like little to no advertising because Wattpad doesn't have much of that unless you're like part of their writers coaching, whatever they call it. Um, so that's how I decided. I'm like, people actually like this. I'm gonna just take the jump because I'd been thinking about it before that. So that's how that happened.
Cool. Cool. So, how did you get into like the paranormal genre? So, I was a supernatural girl, right? So that would be how I was like introduced into the paranormal world, actively watching that show or watching Vampire Diaries or something like that. Is that kind of how you got into it?
A little bit, yeah. Like I grew up reading Twilight, House of Night, stuff like that. So I always read those vampire books, and that's what one of my books was on Wattpad. And then I'm like, this idea for Lucifer's assistant came to me while I was driving to work one day. I'm like, ooh, this is great. So like, that's how I went into the jump for demons. So it's just all crazy in there.
Right?
So has your story changed a lot since its Wattpad days, or is it very similar to what you had posted there?
It has, just from like the feedback that I've gotten, so it's more refined, less Wattpad-y, if you want to call it that,
Yeah,
more growth type phrasing. So
Awesome.
that's really cool.
So, you said like you're in the throes, like you're editing, right? And the name's gonna change.
yeah.
Like, is that hard to give up when you've called your book something for so long or your whip something for so long and then you're like, hey, I'm going to change the name? Is that hard to give up or are you kind of in this place where it's like, it needs a different name?
Both. It's hard to give up because it's been Lucifer's assistant for over 2 years, so it's like, it's gotta, it's and dear and near to my heart, so it's like it hurts to let it go, but to grow, it's gotta change type thing. So.
Mm-hmm. I get that. I get that completely.
So your time frame on that about 2 years ago. So we were heavily into the throes of like the pandemic when you started posting this on Wattpad. Do you think that the pandemic or the lockdowns had any effect on pushing you into writing more often?
Maybe a little bit. I was still working full time because I worked in a grocery store, so we didn't get any time off. I was an
Right.
essential worker, even though I worked in the liquor department. So, um,
That was way essential. Come on.
so I basically just was writing to, I don't know, deal with the stress of people coming in and not really caring because we live in a small town in central Wisconsin. And everyone's like, COVID's not real, whatever. So they were coming in constantly, still getting their alcohol, and it was just stressful time. So that's where writing has always been just a solace for me to get away from things.
Yeah, I think a lot of people we've talked to, they kind of jumped into writing a full-on book. They've written stuff in the past, but they've jumped into writing full-on books when the pandemic really came into view for them because a lot of people weren't at work and they didn't have anything to do, and so they're like, "Well, I'm going to get this put down on paper." That's at least my story for my school shut down, and so I had a lot of extra time on my hands, and so I started writing. But it seems like a lot of people were like, well, I'm going to get this pushed out and get it done at that point. So I think it's really interesting that we always find kind of a through road to back to that.
Sure.
It seems like
for sure, always. So can you tell us about Lucifer's assistant? Like, just kind of give us a rundown. If you can't, I get it, because I'm also one of those people. People are like, "What's your book about?" And I'm like, "Spinning Wheel of Death."
So it starts out with this girl. She ends up dying and she ends up in purgatory. She has to wait there for 50 years. Basically, she wasn't good, wasn't bad. So she has to do like a penance, and she doesn't want to do that. She believes she deserves hell. So she waits around there for a few weeks, arguing with all the purgatory workers, and then she finally calls Lucifer and gets his attention. It's a fated mate story, so Lucifer instantly knows that she is his mate. Her being human doesn't realize it. He ends up taking her to hell with him, basically to be his assistant. And then a lot of stuff happens. I don't want to give it away. They eventually end up getting together. Happy ending, of course. And the fated mates really kind of like plays in there. They got to work through some things to get to that point of actually mating. So it was fun to write. Different story from a lot of things that I've read, so it was nice to do something different that's not out there.
Right. It sounds very interesting.
yeah. The I'm trying to think of what I want to say. I lost it. It's gone. I don't know what it was. It sounds very unique.
Yes.
And that's a cool thing. I love hearing from indie authors because their stories they can go in any kind of direction. They're never like tied into these blocks. Is there a reason that you decided to go indie rather than trying to traditionally publish your book?
I figured doing indie would be easier and for me in the long run, but again, I just didn't know much about the publishing, so I just did self-publishing and found Amazon KDP, so that's where I ended up at. And maybe down the line I'll look at doing a publishing house, but we'll see.
Right. Does it worry you to like query it out? Something that you've been so passionate about for a couple of years, to like send it out, and that fear of like getting those rejections back, is that real for you?
Yeah, 100%. That's probably partially why I didn't do the traditional publishing.
Same.
Yeah, it's nerve-wracking. It's crazy. We just got done talking to a traditionally published author, and she had said, yeah, you're kind of giving up some of that individuality for your book, because then it becomes also the publishing house's book that they have some say in. And I think that a lot of indie authors that we've talked to have said, well, I really didn't want to get those rejection letters, or I really didn't want to give up my autonomy to this book. Do you feel like that was part of it, that you wouldn't want to change something if someone had said, hey, this probably needs to change?
Yes, exactly. The first draft of Lucifer's would have definitely gotten rejected. So it's like, I like where my story is. I changed a few things just to make it more concrete, but like, I don't want to change anything like massively that they want to fit into the traditional roles, whereas I don't write in those traditional norms. So like, I incorporate the BDSM elements, and in my new to be released book, I have the LBGT stuff. So it's like, it's definitely not normal stuff that I feel like would be like encouraged to get published.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We talk to a lot of people who the red tape, like the rules of traditional publishing, are what turn them off. And I think the more that I'm on publishing talk, and I'll call it publishing talk because book talk differentiates a lot of that. The more I'm on publishing talk, the more I'm like, yeah, I don't think my heart could handle 45 rejection letters.
Don't need that.
Like I'm hard enough on myself without somebody being like, this book is really great, we just don't want it.
Yeah.
Like, thank you for ripping my heart out.
It's been cool to talk to different people and get those differing perspectives.
For sure.
I mean, everything is so varied and wide. I mean, your book sounds completely different from other
Thank you.
people that we've talked to,
Mhm.
and I feel like when we get into traditional books a lot, we run into people who are like, well, it's a marriage of convenience book, or it's a
Such and such.
such and such book. You don't get this cross differentiation thing we see with indie authors a lot.
We've had so many indie authors who are like, well, I'm a science fantasy, or I'm a paranormal adventure book. You have more of that genre crossing where they're like, hey, it's this. You know, like where you don't see a lot of paranormal romance in traditional publishing. You just don't.
Yeah.
And if you do, it's like it's a take on Hades and Persephone every
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So
like
it's cool.
vampire one I can think of offhand right now is Janine Frost with her Night Huntress series. So she's like, and she's been around forever. So
Right. Did you have another question?
It's just we've talked about your current release. You said that you have another book coming out in August. Is it a sequel to your first book, or is it a standalone?
It isn't. I have a sequel to Lucifer's, a continuation of their son. That one got put on hold for this one, since this one has been living rent free in my mind. This one's called Of Stars and Water. It's a kind of like a Avatar Last Airbender, but not. So everyone controls one element except for the main girl. She controls all four. She ends up meeting the four princes of each element, and they have to save the world from the bad guy who is trying to erase the royal families and take over people using this like serum that controls them to do whatever he wants. It also incorporates some Norse mythology, so they're all descended from the gods somehow. That's how their powers came to be. On top of the solar storm and World War III that destroyed the planet, so that's how their powers awakened. And then they end up going to Norway to find these crystals that are supposed to heighten their powers to help defeat Blaze, the bad guy. And then she ends up meeting someone important at the end of the book, so spoil that. It's also a fated story that comes into play at times, so it's also a why choose, so everyone's with everyone. So I don't know. I always love those kind of books because love is love. So that's kind of just that one.
When DL released his book, I sat down with him and we did a spoiler episode. And I just randomly, I was like, it kind of feels like you created a throuple. And he just looked at me. And I was like,
accidentally. But yes, it didn't happen.
You did. And we got to the end of the episode. We turned the recording off. And he was like, I didn't even think about that. And I was like, well, as a reader, that's what I got out of it. So.
Well, this one was supposed to start as a throuple and ended up as a 5 people. So.
Yes.
So like the characters write the stories 100%. Didn't understand that until I started writing. It's like these characters definitely wrote themselves. So
you have no idea how many conversations we've had of, okay, so I figured out that it's going to go this way and so is going to end up with so-and-so, and then all of a sudden other character comes out of left field and switches that position entirely, and it's like, how does that happen? How is that even a thing?
Well, and we talk, I'm sure you're a pantser like we are, where you create the character, you create the world, and then you drop them in it. There were so many chapters in my current whip that I messaged our group chat and I was like, y'all, I didn't see that this was gonna happen, and I don't know if I'm okay with it. Like, this came out of my head, yo. And they're like, nope, it's your characters. They're just living life. Like, they're just living life. And that's the thing, right? They're just living their lives.
You're getting their story out.
Mm-hmm. So you kind of like us, you sat down and you knew a end point, right? Like starting point, end point, but for the most part that the middle just kind of unfolds, right?
Yep, exactly.
Do you have trouble planning stuff out when you have to have strict plot points that are going to get you to the progression you need? Do you have trouble planning stuff? I do.
A little bit. I definitely am the pantser. So like I write down mild, vague plot points that I want to happen, and then I just elaborate off of those. So I knew how I wanted this to start and how I wanted it to end, and it went off in 10 different directions of how it was supposed to go. And well, I was trying to get to the good part that I wanted to write. I'm like dragging through the boring part, basically, you know. So it's definitely trying hard to get through those points you don't want to write when you have this perfect idea sitting in your mind that you want to get out.
Right.
Yes.
How bad is it you have this? You're like, oh, this is a shining star moment that I'm going to get to in my book. But you're like, all right, I've got to get through at least 10 pages of this build up so I can get there. And you type for 3 hours. And you're like, oh, I've typed 2 pages. Yay. It kills me every time. We have
Yeah.
we talked about in Origins. You start out at this really high point of Sai walking into a village that is burning to the ground, and then he ends up hospitalized for the next chapter. And that second chapter feels like such a ramp down and slow down that I'm like, it took me forever to write that. Whereas the first chapter was like, oh, here it is, it's done, it's out.
Oh my gosh. So with your whole setup, obviously, with romance, there's spice levels and things that people talk about all the time. And I just, did you find it interesting when you were writing those scenes to like get it done and over with and then have to go back and hash it back out? Were you, because for me, my high fantasy has some romance scenes in it, and I found that I'm needing to go back and kind of rehash the romance scenes because I just like seeing it in my head, I wrote it out, and now looking at it, I'm like, oh, that needs more. Did you run into that?
Yeah, I run into that like all the time. So when you're in those heat of the moment scenes, it's like they're coming out so fast that you're trying to get it all down while it's happening. And then you go back and read it, and it's like, ooh, this is a little rushed, or I missed something here. And you got to go back and change at least half of it, at least for me, half the time. So,
Right, right.
Yeah, I feel like that happens with like fight scenes and
scenes.
stuff as well because you're just like, oh, I know what this motion from A to B is, and getting it down on paper so other people understand what you're saying is so complicated
yeah.
sometimes.
I I don't know. Like, so with you republish, so you're like gonna pull the whole first publish down and put something else up, right? Are you nervous or are you kind of excited to have that revised version out?
I think I'm excited. I'm hoping, like I said, it'll do a little more traction and get a little better, a little more love than it did the first time. So I can't say I wasn't a little disappointed that, you know, like Britt Andrews started writing during the pandemic and her books blew up. And it's like,
Right.
I was disappointed that that first one didn't do so well. But, you know, in your head, you're like, yes, this is the perfect book. And then it comes to self-publishing and you're like, oh, this isn't exactly how I wanted it to go. And I think that's something I also learned. It's like not everyone's going to be a slam dunk. So you got to like roll with the punches and just keep
Right.
going because even if it is hard, writing is still like fun for me. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that that's a thing a lot of indie authors tend to find is that you put all this work into the book, you revise and you edit and you cut stuff out and you find a cover artist and you get all this stuff ready, and then unlike traditional publishing, you don't have a PR team that's going to go out there and push your book for you. It's finding a following on TikTok, finding a following on Facebook, some social media to get your word out there. How have you tackled advertising for your story so far, and how are you handling it differently now?
I've definitely done a lot of TikTok advertising, making videos like whips, just little short quotes and stuff on Instagram, on TikTok. I don't have much of a following on Facebook, which is unfortunate, but I feel like TikTok has done a lot for me. So it's like, while it's distracting for writing, it's like my main source of marketing. So it's like I can't get rid of it. I applaud
Right.
anyone who gets following on Facebook because it'd be a lot easier. But yeah, TikTok has been my main one.
TikTok, I think, is for a lot of
TikTok
people.
TikTok for most people that I've seen, like especially indie authors. This week I've seen at least 4 releases from indie authors that I'm following where they're like, "Here's my cover reveal. Here's like what the blurb on the back of the book." And I I have seen lots of engagement with that stuff. Have you like do you have a cover author that you're going to like work with and then you're going to release like do a cover reveal?
Of Stars and Water, it's completely done editing. I made my own cover on Canva, and then I also had one professionally made. So I'm trying to decide which one to use, or if I want to use one as a discreet and whatnot. But all of that is done. I just got to get to finish editing it, and then it'll be ready to go. But yeah, I'll be sharing that and stuff on TikTok when I'm ready. I don't want to reveal the sexy cover yet.
Yeah.
That's because I want it to be that big show goer, but yeah.
Well, and that's a marketing scheme, right?
Yeah.
Like that's something that you tease and you build up and then you reveal it and people are like, "Oh my gosh, I need that." Like I need that on my bookshelf. So, I think that best piece of advice I ever got was to hype my book prior to it ever being out. And like I'm at 800 followers on TikTok right now, and it's specifically because I'm like posting videos like showing me editing. I'm in the throes of editing. I'm not even close. I don't have a cover, like none of that stuff. So, are you working towards more pushing those books prior to release than like waiting until they're ready to go?
So for Lucifer's, I did a lot of like hype up and while it was getting ready to release. For this one, I've lost a lot of steam with the marketing stuff, so I've been just focusing on the editing, and hopefully I'll get back into that marketing in a little bit and get it hyped up before I set the actual release date. So,
oh, cool.
Well, we will have to look for you on all the socials.
Yes.
What is one piece of advice for writing that you stand by? The best piece you've gotten?
The best piece I've gotten is probably just writing for yourself. And like I said earlier, not listening to those reviews and not counting on the ratings, the sales. You got to find that niche in yourself before you can like allow it to go out in the world, because if you dictate it on how well it's going to do, you're just going to lose your momentum and your motivation, and you just got to keep writing for yourself. So that's what I keep doing.
That's a good piece of advice, right?
Yeah,
For yourself. I like that.
Well, because then you're not so bogged down in the idea that if nobody reads it, that it's worthless, because it's not. You put your heart and soul into that stuff, and it's important that you find value in what you're doing,
For sure.
regardless of the monetary amount that it brings you.
For sure.
So I love that advice. Where can everybody find you across social media?
So I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. I do have a Facebook page. I have my Amazon author page as well, so you can find me on pretty much anything. Usually at Taylor Schafer. Instagram is trose_1234. And Facebook's Taylor Schafer author, so you can find me at pretty much all of those.
Okay.
And we'll have you email us those links so that we can put them in the description of everything.
Yeah,
so.
Any link at all that you want to add there, we'll add to, and we'll put you inside of our Goodreads library so people can find your book. And then when your new book comes out, you'll have to let us know so we can update that for the Goodreads library on there as well. It has been absolutely amazing talking to you. I am D.L. Golden.
I'm SF Rogers.
You can find my book Origins on Amazon. Link is in my TikTok bio if you're looking there.
Yeah, I don't have a book yet. Stay tuned. It's coming. I promise. Like, I'm slacking, but I'm not slacking that much. Okay, it'll be there. Be sure to follow us, subscribe, like our page. Go follow Taylor. Make sure you're hyping up her book. I'm sure it's going to be an amazing release this time, Taylor.
Thank
you
you
so much for talking to us.